So, by improving your three-dimensional movement, you can reduce your risk of injury again in daily life or in your exercise sessions. And you will be more likely to achieve your fitness and your life goals. Your ability to function day to day will also become a lot easier.
Hello, and welcome to the Core Podcast. We're your hosts, Sandina Keller
And Shannon Polson.
I'm a precision nutrition certified coach.
And I'm a NASM certified personal trainer for over 13 years. We support women 30 years old and over to pursue health through realistic nutrition and fitness strategies. Our passion is to help you find that smile when you look in the mirror, find freedom when you eat, and joy in moving your body.
Make sure to subscribe for your bi-weekly dose of doable health tips, practical advice, and so much more. It's the health education you wish you'd had. Welcome to today's episode. We are talking about the three planes of motion. And like I said last time, it's not really airplanes. It is something completely different. So today, Shannon is going to walk us through the three planes of motion when it comes to fitness. So let's take it away.
Thank you, Ailene. Yes. So, whenever you are exercising, you want to focus on your three planes of motion because we live in a three-dimensional world and our bodies need to have the ability to move in all three dimensions. Poor range of motion and instability in just a single joint can severely cause overcompensation. These alternate movement patterns can lead to chronic pain and injury and a lack of confidence, whether it's throughout your daily living or in your exercise routine. So, by improving your three-dimensional movement, you can reduce your risk of injury again in daily life or in your exercise sessions. And you will be more likely to achieve your fitness and your life goals. Your ability to function day to day will also become a lot easier. And I'm going to give you some examples. When you are exercising, you want to have functional exercises that can assist you in loading groceries, playing with the kiddos, doing yard work, whether that's hauling wood, you're pulling weeds, you're raking. You want your daily living to become effortless and more enjoyable, or at least less unenjoyable, I should say. Because I don't know, pulling weeds to me isn't exactly enjoyable, but at least it's easier.
Well, yeah, we don't necessarily want to love the chores, but we don't want to feel pain after them, right?
Exactly, yes. So there are three planes of motion. They are the sagittal, frontal, and transverse planes. So the sagittal plane cuts the body into left and right halves. So this is forward and backward movements, also extension and flexion. So an example of a sagittal plane movement would be when you walk or when you run, when you squat, or when you do biceps curls. Your frontal plane cuts the body into front and back halves. So, this is any kind of lateral movement or side to side, which can include side lunges, side shuffles, lateral arm or leg raises. Your transverse plane cuts the body into top and bottom halves. So, exercises can include core rotations, such as a Russian twist or a wood chop. So, every exercise that you perform, whether you're in the gym or at home, should be related back to movements that you do in real life. Everyone pushes, we all pull, we flex, we extend, we squat, we lunge, we bend, we twist. We do all of that throughout the day, each and every day. So, a lot of exercises, I'm sure you have probably found, I know I have definitely found, and I feel like the general public, most exercises are performed more predominantly in one plane of motion more than the others. And I can definitely say, and I'm sure you agree, that a lot of people perform most of their movements in the sagittal plane. and which is common. I mean, we run, we walk in the sagittal plane. So when you do any kind of lunging, an overhead press, your curls, that type of thing, you're in that forward and backward movement. So, to kind of give you an image of these three planes of motions, I basically want you to imagine that you're just standing there in a neutral position. And I want you to have a plate of glass that cuts your body into either the front or the back, which is your sagittal, the left or the right, which is your frontal, and then the top and the bottom, which is your transverse. So again, you're standing there in neutral position and you have a pane of glass just going through you, separating you into these planes of motions. And then imagine that these plates or this glass is on a track. So your body is moving on that track like a monorail. If a movement seems to mostly track along one plate over the others, it can be classified as being predominantly in that plane of motion. So just keeping that in mind. Some exercises, you're in sagittal and then maybe you do a front lunge into a core rotation. So now you're in the transverse plane. All right, so let's talk more about the sagittal plane. So when you're flexing and extending the lower extremity, we're talking about a squat here. So when you're flexing and extending the lower extremity, the knees are tracking parallel to the imaginary plate that cuts the body into left and right halves. So additionally, the hips move back and down, keeping the knees again parallel to that line or that plate that's cut your body into half, which is now in the sagittal plane. Biceps curls, same thing. So you have that plate going through like your chest, your elbows remain tucked into the rib cage, and now you are performing that curl. You're in that sagittal plane. So other exercises that can also dig into the sagittal plane can include like your triceps push downs or extensions, again with the front or reverse lunges, walking, running, vertical jumping, so just straight up and down, calf raises, all the way into climbing the stairs, because again, you're just moving forward and back. All right, so moving into our frontal plane, which I feel a lot of people, the frontal plane to me is probably the second most common plane that people probably exercise in, and that is your side to side movement. So when I'm with a client, especially older clients, I focus a lot on the frontal plane because as we age we just kind of lose it, when we're younger and whether we're in sports or we're just outside playing, we shuffle around a lot, we're moving from side to side, whereas when we age we're not really performing those movements as predominantly anymore. So again, with the frontal plane, your body is basically cut in half, so a forward and then back. So think of a lateral arm raise, so your arms are just following that plane, that glass sheet that's cutting your body from forward to back, so you're moving to the side. Same thing, side shuffles, karaoke's, anything of the sort where you're moving into that side to side motion. All right, so we are moving into the plane of motion that I feel is most neglected, but can be equally as important as the other two, which would be your transverse plane of motion. So this is where you're cutting your body into upper and lower extremities. So just imagine, I guess maybe that sheet of glass just goes right through your belly button. So now you are performing any kind of rotational exercises. This can again be like your wood chop or your Russian twists. It can also dig into side bending, going to the side with that spinal rotation. It also kind of digs into limb rotation, which I won't dig into, but twisting of a limb towards the center can also be determined as a rotation in that transverse plane as well. So very, very important to focus your exercise routine on that transverse verse motion, because again, as we age or as we just have a more of a sedentary lifestyle, we're not rotating to the side. If you're standing there and you need to rotate to the side to grab something off of the counter, or if you are grabbing that piece of wood that's on the ground and you need to stand up and then chuck it over into the pile of wood, you're in that transverse plane. Core rotation, spinal rotation. It's so important for just spinal health. That's how you really increase the strength and the momentum within your core muscles, both in your posterior and in your anterior side. So in conclusion, our three planes of motion, which is sagittal, our frontal, and our transverse. Make sure that when you are creating your exercise program, that you include all three planes of motion. You want to go forward and back. You want to go from side to side, and you want to make sure that you're rotating. This is going to equal out to a very strong strength building exercise session that is just going to help you move more efficiently throughout your day and in the exercise session, and then also help you prevent injury as well. And then to challenge yourself as well as you progress. So maybe once you've really focused in depth on these three planes of motion for 2 to 4 weeks, now maybe you're adding the planes of motion together. So it goes back to a front lunge, which you're now in sagittal because you're moving forward. And then you move into a core rotation, which is now in your transverse. So front walking lunges with core rotation could be a very good example of now you're progressing again, adding 2 planes of motion in at once. Another one could be like a side step up into an overhead press. So now you're working on the frontal plane of motion because you're stepping up to the side, and then you're performing an overhead press, which is sagittal, or yeah, sagittal. So mixing, having multi-joint exercises in all three planes of motion is definitely going to be very beneficial to you. And just listening to your body, of course, but paying attention to all of these three dimensions and then creating a challenge for yourself in your exercise sessions.
Hearing all this, I definitely, like, I was going through my regular workouts and like what I do, and definitely the transverse plane, which the rotating and twisting, that is definitely something that I do the least.
Yeah.
And I found that I usually do it with core exercises. I'm a weird person. I love working my core. I know
Mm.
that there's no such thing as spot fat reduction. Not that that's my where I hold on to fat. It's really not. But you know, I just really enjoy. I enjoy working my core. So that is where I guess get the most of the transverse. And also when I do stretching. So
Mhm.
a couple times a week, I just do a little bit of cardio, and then I do like a bigger stretch session just to get loosen everything up. And that's where I see a lot of the transverse. But
Mm.
like you said, most of my actual weightlifting workout, it's all in the sagittal and frontal for sure. So that's something to think about, because you don't know about this. You never even think about it when you're doing a workout.
Yeah. And it goes back to the beginning sentence basically, is we live in a three-dimensional world, and we
Mhm.
need to make sure that our exercise routines are accommodating to that. And it's so common for people to have more of that sagittal plane, whether you're a runner or a biker, or you're just used to the lunges and the squats, which are all fantastic. But make sure that you are incorporating all three planes of motion. And if you are not right now, or you have very limited time focusing on the other two planes of motion, then as with any exercise routine, go slow, especially in the transverse
Yeah.
plane, because that rotation, like, take it easy, spend some time. You don't want to injure your lower back or I mean, really, your lower back's going to be that main gig that's going to take most of that. So, strengthening your core is magnificent when using the transverse plane for sure, as you probably know
And I
because you like
feel
the core.
like maybe, now correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like maybe a good way to sort of start to incorporate this and strengthen it a little bit could be with some yoga movements, because I found that at least the kind of stretches that I do with yoga, they have a lot of you start in the sagittal, you go
Mhm.
into either sagittal or frontal, and then there's some sort of twisting motion in a lot of the movement patterns, right? So that could be a good way to kind of get your body used to moving in that plane.
Yes,
Am I right?
100%. Yeah, you absolutely nailed it. And that's another beneficial statement towards yoga and people that are just kind of leery on trying, or at least trying to maintain a practice, is like you said, you're in sagittal, now you're in frontal, now you're in transverse, and then you slowly have to unravel yourself from that. Think of how
Mhm.
much core engagement you are using
Yeah.
when you are doing yoga. So if you're one where, I don't even know where to start, or I need more stretching, I need more core work, I mean, let yoga be your jam. At least give it a shot. I know a lot of people are, like I said, are just very leery on trying yoga because they think it's boring, but it's not. I promise. It's great.
Well, for me, I don't, I, for a while, I was like, okay, I'm going to just practice yoga. And it wasn't a practice that gave me the benefits in terms of muscle. And we've talked about this before, right? Like, building muscle with body weight alone, that's not, that's usually you hit a wall, right? But I found that it's extremely beneficial for me to incorporate yoga as stretch, but also as, like, for me, I feel like it's a full body strength, but exactly, and now I have the vocabulary for it. It is changing the planes of motion, right? Because it's, like you said, you're unwinding from the pretzel, right? So the yoga makes you not only control the static plane of motion, which is what we do with the walking or the running or the weightlifting. You get into that plane of motion and you stay there and you find balance
Mhm.
in that specific way, right? But balance doesn't translate, right? Being balanced in one thing doesn't mean, like, if you have really good balance on a flat surface, it doesn't mean that you're going to have that same balance in a wobbly one, right? So I feel that yoga, for me, that's the biggest benefit. It helps me transition from one thing to the other,
Mhm.
and that reflects not only in my strength training but also in the day to day, just to be able to go from one thing to the other.
100%. Yep. Those are very good dynamics to incorporate into a full exercise routine.
All right. Well, got some good news for you. If you listen to this and you were like, wait, what? And you understood everything, but you don't have a visual, that's okay. I actually heard Shannon talking while I had her free planes of motion open on my computer. So you don't have to visually memorize this and come up with this by yourself. You can go to the description of the podcast and download this free planes of motion PDF. It explains to you what the planes of motion are and a few examples of how to use each one. And you can either download this on the description or just go to practicethecore.com/free and you can download it there as well. So don't worry, you can look at this and then you're going to be like, oh, okay, now it makes even more sense.
Yeah, yeah,
And
definitely.
also, before we let you go, we are the beginning of the year, and next week, because now our podcast is a weekly podcast, which is super exciting for us. So starting next week, I am going to talk to you about how to actually keep those New Year's resolutions that you have with your health. We've all done it. We all do it. This is the year that I'm going to lose X pounds. This is the year that I'm going to run X miles. This is the year that I am going to prioritize my health. And statistically, most of us give up on those resolutions by the end of February. So next week's episode is all about how to not be in that percentage of people that gives up on the resolution. So specifically towards health, I'm going to tell you why most of us give up on this and what you can do so that you can set a resolution and actually reach it.
I love that, Ailini, because I think it was 10% of people that make New Year's
Ish. Yeah,
resolutions.
it's around that. It's low.
Yeah, they maintain it for 6 or more months because the maintenance phase is 6 or plus months,
Yeah.
6 plus months. So let's create a stronger, more powerful you where you can be one of those 10%.
Exactly. And the next year we'll be having a different goal. All right. We will see you next week.